I'm Paul Cram, talking today a little bit about the book that my book club recently read in honor of Gay Pride Month. It's a fairly intense read. The Men with the Pink Triangle. It was written in 1972. The name on the cover is a pen name, Heinz Heger. It's a pen name. I wrote this down just to be accurate, but Heinz Heger is the pen name of writer Hans Neumann, who actually is not who the book is about. Hans wrote the book, but he actually was really close friends, apparently, with Josef Kohout. Kohout, K-O-H-O-U-T. And there you see a picture of Joseph. I don't know when that picture was taken, but I believe it was before Joseph was taken as a prisoner and put into a concentration camp by the Nazis. If you don't know already, this is going to be a fairly... I don't know how much of the book I'm going to... Basically, this is just a disclaimer. The topics in this book are very severe, very intense, heartbreaking, and there's a lot to it that is, in addition to, torture, brutality, all that stuff, there is... There's mention of sex in here, but rape as well and things like that. So this book is not a joy to read. This is actually a really hard book to read. And if you have never heard of or read anything about the Holocaust that includes persecution of gays, you're not alone, because this is actually one of the first things that I have read on this topic as well. I'm going to start talking through some of it. Forgive me if I bounce around a little bit. The introduction really struck home with me. The introduction, there's just some really beautiful things in here. The introduction was written by David Fernbach. And he really he lays out what a good job Jews have done in capturing and writing and in history books and just things like that, the atrocities that happened to the Jewish people by the Nazis. But he points out and mentions how much, like this book wasn't specifically printed until 1972. And at that point, not a lot of people even mentioned or knew that gays were persecuted, and simply for being gay, they were put into concentration camps. But he does a bang-up job of also just informing and including that it wasn't only Jews that were put into concentration camps. It was Jews, it was gays, homosexuals, and there was other people groups as well that were put into the concentration camps, and gypsies. I'm trying to remember all of the people groups. Let me just see if I can find it quickly. But it was gays, gypsies, Jews. It was Christians. If you went against the Reich, Christians would be included in that. Jehovah's Witnesses, no matter what. And also people that were disabled. So it breaks my heart, actually, the part in here. There's a little footnote, and I'm just going to read it to you, but it's about the disabled. It says, the treatment of people suffering from various mental and physical disorders forms yet another hideous chapter of the Nazi Holocaust. The total murdered in this category runs to a further 200,000 or 300,000. If we gays have rightly rejected the idea that homosexuality is, in any sense, a sickness or disability, it is still particularly appropriate that we should remember the sufferings of those with whom we have so often been classified, but who are infinitely less able to struggle against their oppression. And throughout the book, it it is just glaringly obvious, and it breaks my heart so much that someone with a mental disability or someone with a physical disability, there basically was like less than a 1% chance that somebody would even survive if they were, for obvious reasons that they dive into in the book. I mean, in addition to like the labor and the torture and just the things that were happening to the people, if you didn't have a physical disability, you very easily could develop one because of what the treatment. And when that happened, I mean, it was almost like you're basically dead. The things that I'm finding myself after reading this, I mean, words don't even almost capture the emotion. You know, words such as depravity and inhumanity and the things that one human being would do to another human being. Like the words barely even capture the anger that I feel towards the atrocities that are written out in here. So this book itself is really hard to find in a way. The publisher, Allison Publishing, the press, basically, this is out of print. The press that printed this no longer exists. So The Men with the Pink Triangle by Heinz Heger, it is hard to find. There's libraries that have it. You can do interlibrary loan. There are places and spaces that you can purchase a copy. But because it's out of print, it's quite expensive. I mean, the things currently, as of this recording, I think that a copy of this is running right around $50, something like that. But so there's that. The map, there's a map in here I just wanted to show people too. Like, I myself, I haven't read a lot of books specifically on the Holocaust. I'm very familiar, more so with like Corrie ten Boom's story, and what her family went through and what she experienced, in a concentration camp. So some of this it's not necessarily that it's new to me, but it's framed in a way that is new to me. But I really appreciated the fact that like they included. If you can see, I think some people can see, for those that are watching and not listening, they include a map of Europe in here. It has Italy, Austria, Germany, France, the Baltic Sea, and things like that. But the number of concentration camps is staggering to me. Like there were so many. There were specific camps that were set up solely for the murder of Jews, and those are listed. But there's in addition to those, there's so many others. There was Jews, non-Jews. I mean, and people were. I'm having a hard time even sharing some of this because it is heavy, but I think it's important. Specifically when I'm recording this, and part of the reason why my book club read this book is because right now Gay Pride is happening. And I'll just mention this little tidbit. As one who has grown up in the church, in a Christian church, and often heard from, I haven't heard necessarily pastors say this per se, but just I'm using the church with air quotes, but, kind of railing against gay pride and how awful that is and things like that. I would highly suggest, if anybody has, before like spouting off about like how awful gay pride is, I would love to have someone read The Men with the Pink Triangle and then talk to me about how terrible it is to have gay pride. The atrocities and things that to do against a human being solely based on their sexuality, and then to take it to another place and even say like, well, we shouldn't talk about that. We shouldn't mention it. We shouldn't acknowledge that these people existed. I'm kind of tying some of this in with gay pride, So anyway, hopefully people understand where I'm coming from there and coming from that. But it's something that Josef mentions in here quite a bit, which is why is it that someone, like, I think that he did a really beautiful job in explaining what happened to him in the concentration camps, but also was going on, like how the structure was set up, but also what was going on in society and what was going on like at that point in history when he was being told, because you are gay, because you have love or affection for another human being, you are going to go into these camps. And I think he does a really beautiful job of explaining and showing like sex was happening rampant left and right, specifically sodomy and gay sex and men having sex with men was rampant in all levels of everywhere within the concentration camps, between soldiers, between inmates, between, in the prisons and things like that. And oftentimes it was the straight prisoners that were like, oh, you're gay, well, I'm going to rape you, and justifying their rape and justifying torture and justifying all these things based on the fact that because you're gay, I get to treat you this way. I get to do something to you that is immoral. He does a really good job of like grappling with that, because he solely was put into these concentration camps because he's gay. And then the soldiers that are over him are like, well, because you're gay, I'm going to rape you and sodomize you and have sex with you. And he does, it's that grappling question of, so I'm here because I attribute love to some of these actions, and you get to rape me and do these things to me because of that. It doesn't, they're the logic and the lack of logic, and it's horrendous, it's horrible, it's awful. Yeah, so, yeah, a little bit of, I don't know. If you can't tell, this book definitely has, it bothers me, and I think that that's a good thing. I hope that anybody that reads it or looks into it, it bothers them as well. I really found it also eye-opening, or just an interesting piece that he kind of peeled back some things that I kind of have wondered about in my head. One of them being like, hindsight is 20/20, and it's so easy to look back and be like, how could they not know that this is going on? Or how did people not realize? Or if they did, why were they silent? Or why, those types of questions and things. But he does a really good job of showing and explaining, like, even for him, like when he first was arrested, he kind of maybe thought, okay, maybe this is a bad thing, and it wasn't really aware that it was going to turn out the way that it did, that he would end up in a concentration camp. So he did just a bang up good job on sharing that experience. There's basically what he does is he goes fairly just chronological through like his arrest, his imprisonment for being gay, and then his being sent to a concentration camp, and the experiences of living there. And it's beautiful and also ugly and horrible. And he even mentions that it's not lost on him that his survival meant that somebody else died, and that quite often that occurred, where him being able to survive or doing whatever he needed to do to survive meant that somebody else died. And though there's a weight and a gravity to that, and it's there's something in it that there's that will to survive that kicks in the midst of some of the darkest times. I mean, I don't know that I want to share all of it, because honestly, when I was reading some of it, I had to put the book down. I had to walk outside. I had to like take some deep breaths. The level of torture, the level of inhumanity, the level of physical things that they did to people, and the twisted like I can't even, I don't really want to share all of it, because I don't feel like puking in front of everybody, and I don't feel like throwing up on my microphone here, but it's so sad and so atrocious and so disgusting what the Nazis were doing to people. Yeah, it is. One of the stories that really stuck out to me in this was how he would. Sorry, this book is just. This is so grr. So there was, when you would first go into a concentration camp, the groups of people, they would pull them together and you would all, get off the train and they would strip you and they would make you shave off every hair of your body. And he just shares this point in this moment where I believe is a Hasidic Jew. I might be mistaken in some of the terminology here, so forgive me and go ahead and read the book. If I'm getting it wrong, please forgive me. But I believe it's the faction of Jew where they really believe in not cutting your hair, I think, and they have the ringlets and the beard and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, this gentleman came out, rabbi, if I'm not mistaken, and he hadn't shaved all of the ringlets off. And the guards came over and they did it for him. You can imagine where this is probably going, but they used razors, they cut it. They didn't just cut the hair, they literally tortured him. And the rabbi went into I don't know what you'd call it, the whole common room, something like that, and he's bleeding, his head is all bleeding, he's losing a lot of blood, he's just sitting there and rocking back and forth. And he he was rocking back and forth, and he just kept saying the same thing over and over and over, which is that God is good. God is good. And the guards came in and they told him to stop saying that, and he wouldn't. And so they basically beat him to death. And throughout all of it, he just kept saying, God is good, God is good. It just doesn't, it doesn't do, I don't know, I'm sorry. I'm not even sorry, actually. I'm glad. It's so painful to me that it's just painful. That really stuck out to me. There's other moments in the book that really stood out to me as well. Josef is very open about this, but throughout his time, he also used his body to survive. Meaning, they call them capos, the men that are kind of in charge of the different cells, and he had relationships with, depending on who was in what power position and things like that. So he definitely utilized that. But there was one of them who he had a relationship with, and it was, he's very clear that sometimes it was based solely on sex, and he was just getting. I don't want there to be any judgment in my voice when I say this. He utilized and had sex, and he used that to survive. I would do the exact same thing. It's horrific that someone would even be put into that position. The relationship, though, there was this one in particular capo who it went beyond that. It was not just sex. It was actually, there was some affection and there was feeling behind it, and there was things. And I say that because the capo and him, I think the capo had to, for whatever reason, the relationship stopped. Yet the capo always looked over him, always looked over Josef. Like there was a moment in his retelling where he was going to get into really big trouble and be tortured and hung over this pit thing, and most people that got hung over it basically died again. But the capo intervened and saved his life. And it's those actions like that speak so much more and say volumes about the affection, about the human feeling that was occurring, that because you would not put yourself out on a limb solely. It's like, yeah, we fucked once, but no, that's not what this was. There was much more than that. Pardon my French. If you can't handle it, listen to another podcast. The thing that is interesting that he was even contemplating within that was, again, kind of coming back to what I was talking about earlier, which is this notion and this idea that all of these straight men get to rape me, get to use me, get to abuse me. Yet when I have genuine affection, real emotions, real love for another human being, that's then not okay. And then everybody else gets to rape me. Everybody else gets to use me. And it's so heartbreaking, and it's so awful, and it's so wrong. Which brings me to this point too. I love Joseph. He mentions his mother in here, and she, I think for the time period when this happened and things like that, he was very open with her about his sexuality and that he was gay, and she just told him, be careful. Because at that point in time, obviously, it was against the law to be gay, which is part of the reason why stories like Joseph's were not told, is because even after they survived Auschwitz and concentration camps, homosexuals and gays were not able to come out and say, hey, I was in the concentration camp. Because if they would have come out and said, hey, I was in the concentration camp for being homosexual, they would have, either had to stay in prison or gone back. And some of them I don't even think were let out because, again, the levels and levels and levels of horror. Anyways, I might have confused a few things in there, but go ahead, read the book. And I highly recommend reading it, taking a peek at it. But I don't know if I finished that thought about his mother. His mother, it's beautiful because Joseph finally does get out. He gets out, he survives, and he gets out, and he reaches out to his mom. She talks to him, and she's like, "You're near your sister. Go and stay with your sister." And Joseph, he goes to his sister's, and he stays there, and it's beautiful because he gets to stay with his sister's family. And he just, in the book, he just says, he's like, that was a really healing time for him to be a part of an actual family unit. And his sister got to love on him, and that makes me so happy. And he gets to reunite with his mom. And there's something in that I think is so beautiful. And it's so beautiful in addition to the fact that his mom never was like down on him about homosexuality and these things. She just, I feel like in the midst of all of that, living in that time, for her to have that reaction and that response is beautiful. It's very sad to me that his father committed suicide. I think that's really hard for anybody in any point in history, any point in time. Something about the way that he shared that his father, wrote a suicide note to his mom, and his father just told her, he's just like, I'm so sorry. I'm not able to do this. I'm not able to, I can't keep going. Living in that point in history, there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I kind of get that. As I don't know, but, yeah, so there is a lot. I skimmed over a little bit of it. I don't feel like I'm doing this book justice, but I wanted to record this and just talk about it and share. I felt like it was really a good thing to read. I know that I got a lot out of it. And if you haven't ever read anything like this, I highly, highly recommend it. There was some people in my book club that said that they've read other books specifically about the pink triangle and about some of those events, but that this one specifically was really well put together and well written. Because the other ones, it's more about the group. This one is specifically about one person. I'll wrap this up, but I know I maybe should have said this in the beginning, but the pink triangle, for those of you who do not already know, the pink triangle was affixed to homosexuals. Instead of like the Star of David, it was a pink triangle, and it was to identify that they were gay, and that is why they were in prison. And you can see some of the men here in their pink triangles. This, by the way, I think I said this, but this is Joseph, and I can't really see that really well, but that's another version of this book cover. Yeah, I don't know how to do the wrap up on this specific one, but I really do appreciate everyone that's taken the time to listen to this and to hear me talking about this. And I hope that you have a really blessed day.